My name is Evelyn Marie Harper. I'm 58 years old now, living in the same modest ranch-style house on the east side of Toledo, Ohio, that I bought with my first big bakery paycheck back in 1998. The house still smells like cinnamon and vanilla on baking days, even when the ovens are off for the night. That scent clings to the walls like a promise I made to myself all those years ago, that no matter how hard life got, there would always be something sweet waiting at the end of the day. The front porch has the same creaky swing where I used to rock my baby girl, Lily, to sleep while the streetlights flickered on one by one along the quiet block. The wood on that swing is worn smooth from years of my weight and hers, from nights when the world felt too big and I needed to hold her close just to remind myself I wasn't alone. Nothing fancy about this place. Never was. Never needed to be. It's 4 bedrooms if you count the converted sunroom, a kitchen that's seen more 4 a.m. dough kneading sessions than I can count, and a backyard where Lily once tried to plant a garden that mostly grew weeds and memories. But let me take you back 3 years, to when everything looked perfect on the outside and rotten underneath, like one of those layer cakes that's all frosting and no substance. To the day my only child, my Lily, got married at the Lakeside Country Club in suburban Chicago. To the night I stood in a rented navy dress that cost me 2 weeks of profit from the bakeries, watching my daughter walk down an aisle of white roses toward a man who saw her as nothing more than a walking ATM with a pretty smile and a trust fund attached. This is the story I kept locked in my chest until the silence became heavier than the truth itself. It sat there like a stone in my gut, pressing down every time I smiled through another planning meeting or bit my tongue at another backhanded compliment. And when I finally let it out, quietly, calmly, with nothing more than a smile and a projector remote in my hand, everything changed. Not just for Lily, not just for that snake in a tuxedo she called her fiancé, but for me. For the woman who'd spent her whole life building something from nothing, only to watch it almost get torn apart by someone who thought money was the only thing that mattered. 3 years ago, my life was simple, steady, mine. I owned 3 Harper's Sweet Haven bakeries across Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. Started with one little storefront in 1995, after my husband, Derek, walked out when Lily was 4. He said he needed to find himself, like that was some noble quest, instead of just abandoning a wife and a toddler with a stack of unpaid bills and a dream that was barely a whisper. I never heard from him again except for the occasional child support check that bounced like a bad rubber ball. So I found myself instead, right there behind the counter at 4 a.m., kneading dough until my shoulders ached, piping frosting with hands that trembled from exhaustion, building a life one cupcake at a time. I remember the first day I opened the doors. It was pouring rain in Toledo, the kind that soaks you to the bone in seconds. I had exactly $127 in the register, a sign I'd painted myself that read, "Fresh Baked with Love," and a heart full of fear that I'd fail my little girl the way her father had. But people came. First, the early shift workers from the auto plant down the road, craving something warm to chase away the night. Then the moms with strollers looking for a place to sit and breathe. Then the kids after school, drawn by the smell of chocolate chip cookies straight from the oven. I worked 7 days a week for the first 2 years, slept on a cot in the back room some nights because driving home felt like too much. But slowly the business grew. I hired my first employee, Rosa, a single mom from the neighborhood who became like a sister to me. We expanded to a second location in Sylvania, then a third in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Harper's Sweet Haven wasn't just a bakery anymore. It was a legacy, my legacy, and Lily's, whether she knew it or not. Lily grew up watching me work, and that's the part that still makes my throat tight when I think about it. She saw the flour in my hair like dandruff from another planet, the burn scars on my forearms from hot trays that left shiny pink lines like battle wounds. She saw the way I smiled at every customer, even when my feet screamed in those cheap non-slip shoes and my back felt like it had been run over by a truck. She learned early that nothing worth having comes easy. By high school, she was helping in the shop on weekends, decorating cookies with that steady hand she got from me, taking orders at the counter with a charm that made even the grumpiest old men crack a smile. When she got into Northwestern University on a partial scholarship, I cried in the walk-in cooler so she wouldn't see the tears mixing with the condensation on the walls. I sold my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one my mama had given me on my wedding day, to cover the gap in tuition. It was worth $4,800 at the pawn shop. I told Lily it was insurance money from an old policy. She believed me because she always did. She graduated with honors in marketing, landed a good job at a downtown Chicago ad agency right out of school, and every Sunday she still called, no matter what. "Mama, you working too hard again," she'd say, her voice bright even through the phone static. "Only as hard as the dough needs, baby girl," I'd reply, wiping my hands on my apron and leaning against the counter. We laughed. We planned visits. Life felt right, like the pieces had finally clicked into place after all those hard years. Then she met Brandon Whitaker. He was tall, polished, always in crisp button-downs and loafers that never seemed to touch actual mud or snow or anything real, worked in private wealth management at a fancy firm on Michigan Avenue, the kind of place where they probably charge you just to walk through the door, said things like portfolio diversification and legacy planning with the ease most people say, pass the salt or how's the weather. Lily met him at a charity gala she'd organized for work, a black tie event for some children's hospital in the city. She'd spent weeks on it, calling in favors, making sure every detail was perfect, because that's how she was. He sent her roses the next day, 24 long-stemmed reds that arrived at her apartment with a card that said, "To the woman who made the night unforgettable." Dinner at Alinea the week after, the kind of place where the bill could feed a family of 4 for a month. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and I was driving up to Chicago more times than I could count, trying to wrap my head around this man who seemed too good to be true. The first time I met him was at a brunch spot in Lincoln Park, one of those trendy places with exposed brick and $18 avocado toasts. I drove up from Toledo in my bakery van because my old Honda was in the shop again, the transmission acting up like it always did in winter. I wore my best blouse, the cream one with the tiny embroidered roses I'd sewn myself, late one night after closing. I brought a box of fresh lemon blueberry scones, still warm from the oven, wrapped in a checkered cloth napkin like my mama used to do. Brandon smiled when he saw the box, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Homemade?" he asked, taking the box like it was a curiosity from another era. "Fresh from the oven this morning," I said, proud as punch. "Thought you might like a taste of home." He took one bite, chewed thoughtfully, then set it aside on his plate. "Interesting texture, very rustic. Reminds me of those country fairs back home." Lily squeezed my hand under the table, her fingers warm and reassuring. Later, in the ladies' room, with its marble counters and fancy soap dispensers, she whispered, "He's nervous around new people, Mama. Give him time. He's not used to real families like ours." I gave him time. God knows I did. Over the next year, the wedding planning began in earnest, and that's when the cracks started to show, little fissures in the perfect picture they were painting. Lily wanted something elegant but warm. Think string lights and wildflowers, a nod to the simple life I'd given her. Brandon's mother, Patricia Whitaker, Patty to her friends at the country club, wanted timeless, which in her world meant expensive, very expensive. The Lakeside Country Club ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and views of Lake Michigan that cost $25,000 just to rent for the evening. A string quartet flown in from New York, 5-course plated dinner with ingredients I'd never even heard of, like Wagyu beef and black truffles. Custom monogrammed napkins with their initials intertwined like they were royalty. Open bar with top shelf everything. Scotches that were older than Lily, wines from vineyards in France that probably cost more per bottle than my monthly mortgage. I offered to bake the wedding cake and all the desserts, 4 tiers of vanilla chiffon with raspberry filling, plus 300 cupcakes in 3 flavors, lemon poppy seed, chocolate hazelnut, and my famous red velvet. I'd even sketched out the design on graph paper one night after closing, imagining how the buttercream roses would cascade down the sides like a waterfall of sweetness. Brandon smiled when she brought it up at one of the planning luncheons at her Winnetka mansion. "That's so sweet, Evelyn," she said, sipping her iced tea with a lemon wedge. "But we've already booked Pierre from Bouchard Bakery in New York. He's flown in for elite weddings only. It's all arranged." I nodded, smiled, said nothing, but inside something twisted. I'd built my life on dough and determination, and here was this woman treating my offer like it was a quaint little hobby. Patty and Richard were old Chicago money, or at least they acted like it, which is sometimes worse. Richard owned a string of car dealerships on the North Shore, the kind where the salesmen wear suits and the lots are full of BMWs and Mercedes that gleamed under spotlights. Patty chaired committees for the Junior League, wore pearls the size of marbles that clicked when she moved, and spoke in that clipped Midwestern accent that turns bag into beg and makes everything sound like a judgment. They lived in a brick colonial in Winnetka with a circular driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges, a pool house bigger than my entire first bakery, and a staff that included a housekeeper who answered the door in a crisp uniform. Every time I came up for planning meetings, driving the 3 hours from Toledo in my van that still had faint traces of flour in the floor mats, Patty found ways to remind me I didn't quite fit into their world. "Evelyn, dear, you must be so proud of how far you've come," she'd say, her eyes flicking over my sensible flats and the simple gold cross around my neck. "From that little shop to, well, 3 of them now. How quaint." Or, "Lily tells us your little shops are just darling. Do you do those cute custom cookies for birthdays, the ones with the sprinkles?" Lily always jumped in, her voice firm but kind. "Mama built everything herself. 3 locations now. She employs 22 people, and she's expanding into online orders. It's a real business, Patricia." Patty would pat Lily's hand like she was soothing a child. "Of course, sweetheart. We all start somewhere. Richard's father started with 1 dealership too, you know." I kept smiling, kept baking, kept paying for whatever Lily asked, floral consultations that ran $5,000, dress alterations at a boutique in the Gold Coast, the deposit on the honeymoon suite in Maui that was bigger than my house. I didn't tell her how thin my savings were getting, how I'd taken a second mortgage on the Toledo shop to cover my share of the family contribution. I didn't want her to worry. She was happy, so I thought. That's what mothers do. We carry the weight so our children don't have to. But something felt off about Brandon. It wasn't one big thing at first. It was the little things, the ones that nag at you like a loose thread on a favorite sweater. He was always polite, always charming. He'd pull out my chair at dinners, compliment my hair, ask about the bakeries in a way that sounded interested, but his eyes never quite met mine when we talked about money. And there were those moments that stuck with me. The way he'd check his phone during family dinners at some upscale steakhouse in Chicago, smiling at text he wouldn't explain, his thumb scrolling like the screen held secrets. The way he'd say things like, "Your mom's doing great for someone who started with nothing," like it was a compliment, but it landed like a backhand. The way he once asked Lily in front of me over coffee at their apartment if she was sure about the prenup, because it's just smart when there's a disparity in assets, babe. Protects everyone. Lily laughed it off, waving her hand like it was no big deal. "He's just practical, Mama. He comes from a world where they think about these things. It's not personal." I wasn't so sure. Practical felt a lot like calculating to me. So I did what any mother would do when something doesn't sit right in her gut, when that little voice in the back of your head won't shut up no matter how many times you tell it to. I hired a private investigator. Not some shady guy in a trench coat from a bad movie. A licensed firm out of Cleveland, former detectives, background checked, discreet as a whisper in church. It was expensive, $8,500 up front, plus expenses, but I scraped it together from extra weekend orders at the bakeries. I told Lily I was taking a little business trip to visit suppliers. She believed me. 3 weeks later, I got the report in a plain manila envelope delivered to my door by a courier who didn't even make eye contact. I waited until the house was quiet, the only sound of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Then I opened it at the kitchen table, the same one where Lily used to color pictures of our family when she was little. Brandon had $87,000 in credit card debt, mostly casino markers from trips to Vegas and Atlantic City, slots, blackjack, the works. A sports betting app with a running balance in the red that made my stomach drop, $42,000 owed to some offshore bookie, And the most chilling thing of all, multiple wire transfers from his personal account to an escort service in Chicago called Elite Companions, LLC, labeled as consulting fees in the descriptions, like that made it legitimate. Dates going back 8 months, right around when he and Lily started getting serious. But the worst part, the part that made me feel like the floor had dropped out from under me, were a series of text messages the PI had pulled from a burner phone linked to him through some digital forensics magic I didn't fully understand. Screenshots time-stamped over 6 months, printed in crisp black and white like evidence in a trial. Brandon to an unknown contact. She's sweet, but the real prize is the trust fund Grandma left her. Once we're married, I can access it. Then I'm out. You and me in Cabo, baby. Sun, sand, no more of this Midwest bullshit. The reply, her mom's loaded too, right? Bakery chain could be a nice bonus. Brandon, nah, that's small time. Maybe a couple mil total if you sell it all and liquidate. Lily's the one. 4.2 million in trust when she turns 28 next year. Grandma's will. Locked until marriage. I checked with the estate lawyer. Discretion clause, but it's ironclad. Marry her, wait a year, divorce quiet. Illinois is no fault. Half is 9 easy. Then we're set. I sat there in my kitchen at 3 a.m., flour still dusted on my hands from the night shift, staring at those words until they blurred into meaningless shapes. My daughter, my baby girl, who I carried for 9 months through morning sickness and swollen ankles, who I rocked through fevers and nightmares, who I cheered through every scraped knee and school play, being played like a poker chip in some high-stakes game. I didn't scream, didn't cry, not then. The tears came later, in the shower where no one could see. Instead, I made coffee in my favorite chipped blue mug. The one Lily had painted World's Best Mama on when she was 8. The letters wobbly and full of love. I sipped it black, the bitterness grounding me. And I planned. Cold, clear, like the way I'd planned my escape from Derek all those years ago. I wasn't going to ruin the wedding. That would have been too easy, too messy, and it might have pushed Lily away. I wasn't going to confront him early and give him time to spin a story, to gaslight her into thinking I was the crazy one. I was going to let him walk right into the trap he'd built for himself. Let him stand up there in front of God and everyone, thinking he'd won, and then pull the rug out so hard he'd never get up. The wedding day arrived crisp and golden, late September. The kind of day that makes you believe in fairy tales until you remember they're just stories. The club overlooked Lake Michigan, the water sparkling like diamonds under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. White tents dotted the lawn like mushrooms after rain, swans gliding on the water like they'd been rented from Central Casting. I arrived early in my navy dress, the one I'd rented from a consignment shop in Chicago because buying it new would have been ridiculous. My hair was pinned up in a soft chignon, pearl earrings from my mother dangling like tiny anchors. I carried 2 large bakery boxes, backup cupcakes, just in case the fancy ones from New York didn't hold up, I told the coordinator. The staff knew me from all the drop-offs over the months. One of the AV guys, Miguel, had worked summers at my Sylvania location back in high school. Good kid, honest as the days long. I trusted him with my life. I found Miguel in the ballroom, setting up the projector for the slideshow Lily wanted. Childhood photos, engagement pictures, cute couple moments set to some sappy Ed Sheeran song. The room was a dream, round tables draped in ivory linen, centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus, place cards in gold script. But all I could see was the big screen at the front, blank and waiting like a canvas for the truth. I pulled him aside near the sound booth, my voice low. "Miguel, honey, I need a favor, a big one, the kind that could cost you your job if it goes wrong, but I promise it won't." He listened without interrupting, his dark eyes steady. I showed him the USB drive, explained what was on it in hushed tones, the statements, the texts, the audio. When I finished, he just nodded. No questions, no judgment. "Got it, Mrs. Harper. Say the word and I'll make it happen. For Lily, for you." The wedding day was beautiful, the kind that makes you forget the world for a minute. Lily glowed in ivory lace, her dress a masterpiece of beading and tulle that hugged her like it was made for her dreams. Brandon looked like a catalog model in his custom tux, all sharp lines and perfect hair. When the officiant, a polished Episcopalian priest from the club, asked if anyone objected, I stayed silent. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. The reception kicked off at 6 p.m. with cocktail hour on the terrace, past hors d'oeuvres like tiny lobster rolls and foie gras bites that cost more per piece than my first car. Champagne towers bubbled like liquid gold. I sat at a table near the back with a few of Lily's college friends, sweet girls who hugged me like family, and my cousin Ruth from Dayton, who'd driven in with a cooler full of her famous potato salad, because you can't trust these fancy caterers. No one from Brandon's side spoke to me except polite nods and the occasional, lovely event, isn't it? During dinner, the toasts began, each one a little more polished than the last. Brandon's best man, a slick guy named Chad from his fraternity days, told golf stories that had the room chuckling, how Brandon had once sunk a hole-in-one on the 18th at some exclusive course. The maid of honor, Lily's roommate from Northwestern, cried about sisterhood and late-night talks, and how Lily had always been the one to keep her grounded. Then Brandon stood to speak, tapping the mic with a grin that looked genuine to anyone who knew better. He thanked everyone for coming, praised Lily as the love of his life, said how lucky he was to have found her. The room was wrapped, glasses raised, smiles everywhere. Then he leaned down to his best man, thinking the lapel mic was off, but it caught every word clear as day over the speakers. Quiet chuckle, like a secret between bros. Man, her family's money is the only reason I'm here. 4 million reasons, to be exact. But hey, she's hot too, right? A few people nearby laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, the kind of crude humor guys share at bachelor parties. Lily smiled uncertainly, her hand on his arm. Patty Whitaker beamed from the head table like she'd just won the lottery. Richard raised his glass in a toast. I felt the room tilt, my heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. That was my cue, the moment I'd been waiting for, the one I'd rehearsed in my head 1,000 times on the drive up. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress, every eye in the room turning toward me as the whispers started. I walked to the head table with the quiet dignity I'd learned from behind the counter, facing down difficult customers and life's curveballs. Lily looked up, confused. "Mama, what's going on?" I smiled, the same warm, reassuring smile I give to customers when the line's out the door and the oven's broken and everything's falling apart, but I refuse to let them see it. "Sweetheart, before we cut the cake, I have a little slideshow of my own, family memories, just a mother's touch to make this day even more special." Brandon laughed, a little too loud, a little forced. "Evelyn, we already have one." I nodded to Miguel, who was waiting by the booth like a guardian angel in a black vest. The lights dimmed slowly, the string quartet fading into silence. The big screen behind the sweetheart table flickered on, the projector humming to life. Not baby photos, not engagement pictures of sunsets and stolen kisses. First slide, Brandon's credit card statements, blown up huge, red ink everywhere, $87,000 in bold, unforgiving numbers, Vegas, Atlantic City, online bets. Second, casino win-loss reports from the Nevada Gaming Control Board showing losses that dwarfed his salary. Third, wire transfers to Elite Companions LLC, dates and amounts highlighted in yellow. Fourth, the text messages enlarged until the words filled the screen, every damning syllable readable from the back row. "She's sweet, but the real prize is the trust fund Grandma left her. Once we're married, I can access it. Then I'm out. You and me in Cabo." Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. A glass shattered somewhere near the bar. Lily's face went white as the tablecloth, her hand flying to her mouth. Brandon lunged for the remote on the table, his face twisted in panic. Miguel calmly stepped in front of him, arms crossed, a wall of quiet strength. "Sir, please remain seated." Patty stood up so fast her chair scraped back, her pearls bouncing. "This is outrageous! Turn it off this instant! Security!" I spoke softly, but my voice carried because the room was dead silent now, every breath held. "Lily, baby, I didn't want to believe it either, but a mother knows when something's wrong. I hired someone to check. This is what they found. I'm so sorry it had to be like this." I turned to the guests, scanning faces, some shocked, some already pulling out phones, others looking like they wished they were anywhere else. "I baked for this day. I paid for part of this day. I raised that girl up there with every dime and every drop of sweat I had, and I will not watch her walk into a lie dressed as a love." Lily looked at Brandon, her eyes searching his face like she was seeing him for the first time. "Is this true? Brandon, tell me it's not." He stammered, his charm cracking like cheap porcelain. "It's taken out of context, babe. You know how guys talk. It's just locker room stuff. Evelyn's twisting this." Another slide clicked on, an audio clip from the PI's hidden recorder at a bar 2 months ago. Brandon's voice, slurred from too many whiskeys, clear as day over the speakers. "She's cute, sure, but the trust is the jackpot. Marry her, wait a year, divorce quietly, half's mine in Illinois. Easy money. Then I'm gone, living the life we deserve." Lily's knees buckled. Her maid of honor caught her, wrapping an arm around her waist. Tears streamed down Lily's face, smearing the perfect makeup she'd spent hours on that morning. Richard Whittaker stood, his face red as a beet. "Evelyn, you're making a scene at my son's wedding. This is unacceptable." I met his eyes across the table, steady as the oak in my bakery counters. "No, sir, your son made the scene. I'm just shining the light on it so everyone can see what's really there." Grandma's lawyer, Mr. Ellison, a sharp-dressed man in his 60s who'd flown in from Cleveland at my expense and been waiting in the wings like a silent partner in justice, stood up from a side table near the door. He'd been sipping water quietly the whole time, papers in a leather folder on his lap. He walked forward with the calm authority of a man who'd seen 1,000 family dramas. "Mrs. Harper, soon to be ex-Mrs. Whittaker, if I may, per the terms of the Eleanor Whittaker Trust, named after the bride's late mother's on her side, the assets are released only upon marriage to a suitable partner of good character. Evidence of fraud, deceit, or financial misconduct voids that clause immediately. The trust reverts to the contingent beneficiary." He looked directly at Lily, his voice gentle. "That's you, dear. Full control. No husband required. The assets are yours to manage as you see fit." Lily's staring at the papers he handed her, her hands shaking. Then at Brandon, who was now sweating through his tux, his perfect hair falling into his eyes. Patty shrieked, her voice piercing the murmurs. "This is blackmail. We'll sue you for every penny. This is defamation." Mr. Ellison shook his head, unflappable. "No, ma'am. This is a state law, upheld in Cook County courts for generations, and the Chicago PD Fraud Division has already been sent copies of the evidence. They're waiting outside in the parking lot if anyone needs to speak with them. Officers are discreet but thorough." Guests started whispering louder now, phones out, videos probably already uploading to whatever social media the young ones used. Brandon's best man, Chad, slipped toward the exit like a rat abandoning ship. Patty tried to grab Lily's arm, her nails digging in. Lily pulled away so hard she almost fell. I walked to my daughter, ignoring the chaos, and took her hands in mine. They were cold, trembling. "I'm so sorry, baby, but you deserve the truth, not a transaction, not a lie wrapped in a tuxedo." Lily looked at me with tears streaming, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. Then at Brandon, who was pleading now, his voice cracking. "Lily, please, this is all a misunderstanding. Your mom's jealous, that's all. She never liked me." She shook her head, her voice small at first but growing stronger. "You never loved me. You loved what I came with. The money, the trust, the way you could fix your messes." Security, two big guys in black suits who'd been hovering near the doors, escorted him out, one on each arm. He didn't fight, just hung his head like the weight of his own words had finally crushed him. Patty followed, screaming about lawsuits and how she'd ruined my little bakeries, her voice echoing down the hallway. Richard just sat there, stunned, staring at his empty champagne glass like it held answers. The string quartet packed up quietly, instruments clicking into cases, guests left in waves, some hugging Lily and whispering sympathies, others avoiding eye contact like the scandal might rub off. A few of the older ladies from Patty's circle shot me dirty looks, but I didn't care. I'd faced worse. I stayed. We sat in the empty ballroom until 2 a.m., the chandeliers dimmed to a soft glow, the table still set with half-eaten plates and wilting flowers. Lily cried on my shoulder, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Miguel brought us leftover cupcakes from the kitchen, my red velvet ones, the ones I'd insisted on bringing anyway. We ate them in silence, the sweetness a small comfort in the ruins. I drove us home to Toledo at dawn, the highway stretching out empty and gray under a pink sky. Lily slept in the passenger seat the whole way, curled up like she was a little girl again, her head on my shoulder when the road got straight. Back in my kitchen, the one that still smelled like yesterday's baking, I made coffee in the chipped blue mug. Lily sat at the table where she used to do homework, her engagement ring gone, a faint tan line where it had been. "Mama, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why let it get this far?" "Because I wanted you to see it for yourself, baby. If I'd said it, you might have defended him. You might have chosen him over me. Now you know. In your heart, you know." She nodded slowly, picking at a thread on her sweatpants. "I feel so stupid. How did I not see it?" "No, baby, you trusted. That's not stupid. That's human. That's what makes you the good one in all this." 2 years later. Lily's 28 now, the age when that trust fund would have kicked in under the old terms. She runs the marketing for my bakeries, turned them into a small regional chain with an online store that ships nationwide. We opened a 4th location in Ann Arbor last spring, right near the university where she went to school. The grand opening was a madhouse, lines out the door, free samples of those lemon blueberry scones that Brandon had once dismissed as rustic. Lily handled the social media, the influencers, the whole digital side. She's a natural, just like I knew she would be. She lives in the apartment above the original Toledo shop now, the one I fixed up with fresh paint in a little balcony overlooking the street. Dates occasionally, a nice teacher from the local high school, a guy who comes in for coffee and stays to chat. Nothing serious yet. She says she's learning what real looks like, the kind that doesn't come with strings or hidden agendas. Brandon? Last I heard through the grapevine, because small worlds and big mouths, he declared bankruptcy 6 months after the wedding, moved back with his parents in Winnetka, sleeping in his old childhood bedroom like a kid who never grew up. Patty tells anyone who will listen at the club that I ruined her son's life, that I'm a vindictive small-town nobody who couldn't handle her boy's success. Funny how the truth ruins more than lies ever could. Richard sold 2 of his dealerships to cover some of the fallout. They don't throw parties like they used to. Me? I still bake at 4 a.m. some days when the world's quiet and the dough feels like therapy under my hands. Still wear flour in my hair like a crown. Still sit on the porch swing with my blue mug, watching the streetlights come on one by one, thinking about how far we've come. And every time Lily calls me Mama with that same voice she used when she was little, soft, full of trust, I know I did the hardest thing a mother can do. I protected her heart, even when it meant breaking it first. Have you ever had to protect someone you love from a truth they weren't ready to see? Have you ever watched someone you raised walk towards danger and had to decide whether to pull them back or let them learn the hard way? Tell me your story in the comments below. What city are you listening from? Drop a heart if this hit home and share it with that friend who needs to hear it. I read every single one. Your stories keep me going. If this tale of quiet strength and standing up for what's right touched you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real-life stories about love, betrayal, family, and the kind of resilience that comes from living it. From my kitchen to yours, may your coffee always be strong, your heart stronger, and your truth the strongest of all. With love, Evelyn Marie Harper, Toledo, Ohio.